At WFM Labs, our organization recognizes the importance of gaining market insights to compete effectively and provide better goods and services to our customers. However, exchanging price or commercially sensitive information with competitors can violate antitrust laws and harm competition. To avoid antitrust risk, it is essential to ensure that information exchanges in the WFM Labs community are reasonable and promote competition. This includes avoiding discussions or coordination of sensitive topics such as customer prices, pricing paid to vendors, compensation paid to employees, or proprietary information. If you would like more information, please refer to the guidelines outlined by the FTC and DOJ, Antitrust Guidelines for Collaborations Among Competitors. In addition, WFM Labs meetings are being recorded. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to be recorded. And finally, we ask that all participants review and comply with our code of conduct. Thank you.
Welcome, this is Ted Lango, and I'm joined by Josh Wilkins and Susan Morgan, two of our additional co-founders of WFM Labs. Welcome to episode 2 of our weekly webinar series. Today we'll cover the significant drivers that have converged and talk about why we believe it's time for change in our workforce management practices. Last week, we presented episode 1, which is an introduction to the WFM Labs community, in addition to presenting our mission statement displayed here on the page. We gave an overview of WFM Labs, the initial resources that we've built. We presented our governance model and introduced you to the founding members and discussed our upcoming event schedule. If you're new to WFM Labs, you're welcome to go back and watch episode 1 to get a tour of what's out there today. So in the coming weeks, we're going to be exploring new ways to think about workforce management. But before we begin to explore new approaches to WFM, it's important to recognize why. The need for change starts with intersecting drivers. We believe these drivers are significant enough to warrant re-examining the processes we've leveraged for the past 2 decades. So clearly, to start with, the global pandemic is a significant driver for change. You know, it's been 3 years now, but just coming up on 3 years, contact centers were forced to change their practices overnight. The focus for quite some time centered on deploying adequate technology solutions to support 100% remote workforce. And while some companies have required contact center employees to return to the office, the next generation workforce management practices really needs to address the new reality for many companies, where CSRs may no longer be physically positioned in traditional brick and mortar centers. But we believe that the impact of the global pandemic itself on employees and employers extends past that notion of just where we work. Companies are still grappling with restricted frameworks. They either need to be in the office or need to be 100% remote. And frankly, one size doesn't necessarily fit all. Some people thrived remote during COVID, other people struggled not being back in the office. So companies still need to think about how people best perform while they're employed, whether it's remote, hybrid, or in person. During COVID too, a lot of people lost loved ones and started to reevaluate their relationship with their employer. Is it worth it? You know, reevaluating that work-life relationship itself makes us have to reevaluate how we're working with our employees themselves. And while compensation is often stated as a leading reason for employers leaving customer service roles, many studies from organizations like McKinsey suggest that the traditional playbook for attracting and retaining talent has changed dramatically. So if you're still working with the old practices for WFM, your competition may have a leg up on you as they start to reinvent their playbook. So the second reason that we believe things are changing is automation. This isn't a new driver for change, but really requires consideration when we combine it with these other 4 factors. We've been hearing for decades the promise of technology eliminating call centers. And yes, while volumes have come out, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics actually shows that the job outlook for CSRs is only estimated to decline 4% from 2021 to 2031. So volumes will still continue to come out at small levels, but really it's always the easy calls that migrate out first. That leaves us with more complexity in the calls we take. It traditionally turns into greater segmentation. Most importantly, we believe that that's going to require a new type of agent, a person who can think more on their feet without a roadmap. And complexity requires more training, more support. And as you invest in agents who handle greater complexity, you're going to want to retain them. That puts additional pressure on solving one of our legacy problems that contact centers have always faced, which is high employee turnover. The third factor that we see out there really is independent and gig work, not just organizations like Fiverr, Upwork, Freelance.com, but the countless task and delivery gig jobs, Uber Eats, DoorDash, Amazon, and now there's millions of people out there running their own entertainment gigs, whether it be through YouTube, Instagram, online, running their own small business. The gig economy and independent work is placing a whole new set of pressures and challenges on traditional contact center jobs. And while independent workers have long represented a portion of the U.S. civilian workforce, the growth in this segment over 2021 and 22 is really staggering. Again, McKinsey conducts something called their American Opportunity Survey, and they published an article titled Freelance, Side Hustles, and Gigs. Many more Americans have become independent workers. This change is meaningful. It's a seismic change. On that last survey, 36% of all employed Americans responded as being independent. Independent or contract work has always had a long history with temp workforces in contact centers. We've had seasonality where we need to ramp up on contact center employees on temporary basis, but that's going to be severely challenged by the fact that people have many, many more opportunities to pick up work through the gig economy. We're also seeing another impact as we talk to customers is that attrition cycles have changed as well. Years ago, you would experience some attrition when people were first hired if it was the wrong fit, during training or onboarding, and then attrition at some point later, 9 months, 12 months, 24 months. Now we're seeing far higher dropout rates right when we hire people because there's a lot more opportunity to go out, pick up gig work out there. So that impacts us in another way as well, where how we recruit people, bring them on is that much more critical.
Yeah, something to add there, Ted. I think onboarding is a crucial component of getting rid of that early attrition. And something that we played with a lot is gamification, getting engagement, especially with the Gen Z or newer people coming into the workforce, getting that culture, that connection with remote work, and just like you said, the ease of access to new opportunities. It's really, really crucial that there's something that's bringing them to work outside of the paycheck.
Yeah, totally agree. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I personally think this is one of the larger factors that really requires us to rethink workforce management is it's just that much easier to get work on the fly overnight. Amazon itself, you can go down, fill out an application and be working. The fourth reason that we see intersecting is a new generation and the associated dynamics of the current younger generation, or Gen Z. Each time we have a new generation, that new generation has different views on how they look at work. Gen Z's outlook itself is now shaped by witnessing the global pandemic, insecurity across many industries as companies shut down, reduce staff, or freeze hiring. For the first time, we also have workforce youth entering the workplace in 2020 through 2022 lacked the in-person environments, leaving Gen Z missing out on hands-on training and support the contact centers would traditionally offer. Many studies show that Gen Z will look toward security, stability, and flexibility. And while employment at Fortune 500 companies offers security and stability, contact center roles and traditional WFM practices haven't offered tremendous flexibility in the past. Another angle that I think is important around both Gen Y, the millennials, and Gen Z is that they're digital natives. They generally embrace technology, but that can cut two ways. If Gen Y and Gen Z sees technology as purely profit motive driven, then they're just as likely to reject technology changes. So we think it's very important when we start to think about next generation workforce is how do we consider how we position technology in favor of the employee and the overall customer experience. Finally, reason number 5, the 4 previous areas and many other factors lead to one large impact, which is more extraordinary times of uncertainty. Greater business uncertainty, in the simplest sense, introduces greater risk into businesses. Economic cycles, geopolitical events, global warming, data security, supply chain, alternative energy, the factors go on and on and on that cause businesses to face times of remarkable change and uncertainty. Workforce management's long focused on precision and repeatable patterns in developing our plans to balance supply and demand and to execute those plans effectively. Yet our function's approach to the planning and execution should acknowledge this increasing degree of uncertainty. Precision is still a priority. We want our plans to be accurate, but next generation workforce standards really need to recognize a greater need for emphasis on planning for uncertainty and executing to address the variance that uncertainty brings. In the coming weeks, we're going to be talking a lot about what this means in terms of a whole new language to how we approach our planning. We'll be speaking a lot about the importance of incorporating risk into our practices, leveraging risk rating systems to expose capacity plans that introduce unnecessary risk to our operations.
This one is close to my heart. I have a background on the incident management side of things, and something that we really focused on is defining the impact from a workforce lens. Generally, when you're dealing with a major IT issue or something like that, the impact is dollars, customers, the end of the line type impact. It's really important to bring from a business perspective the dollars on the workforce side. You're talking huge money in a lot of cases. Usually IT teams are a little bit more hesitant to take that information as fact. So when you design things from the ground up, from a capacity plan perspective, you can get involved early and make sure that it's part of what's captured as part of impacts. We saw a big shift in just severity based on impacting contact centers, where an issue might not seem like a large issue, but if you have 9,000 agents who are just sitting there burning capital, all of a sudden it really shifts the perspective on it.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I do think this one, I said earlier, independent workers, but I guess this one is as important as we look at these factors of how we rethink workforce management practices themselves. So just to recap, 5 intersecting drivers. The pandemic brought us a new remote support model for onboarding, for training, for coaching, for in-call support. Considering employees and where they thrive, whether remote, in office, or a hybrid model works for them, that needs to start to be thought of when we think about what we do in workforce management. The fact that employees are reevaluating their relationship with their employer. And as companies solve this, there's going to be increased competition for those who haven't. Recruiting challenges, attracting and retaining talent is really going to become a challenge for those who don't adapt to the new world. The second, exponential change in technology, again, something that has been going on for years, will continue to go on for years. More complex contact types continue to come out, results in longer handle time, greater complexity, greater segmentation. That comes with more significant challenges for supporting reps, both when we're onboarding and training. Ongoing support training is going to have to be upped over time, And again, as you invest in your employees and really train them up, you're not going to want to lose them. So the retention of employees is going to be more important than ever as technology continues to advance. Again, the gig economy, I think this is startling. 36% of the workforce now identifies themselves as independent workers. We know that that drives traditional temporary hiring challenges, shorter cycles, new hire attrition, and presents, again, more challenges for recruiting, attracting, and retaining talent. Gen Z, the introduction of a new workforce. Gen Z is looking for greater flexibility and security. Again, I think this overlaps with the recruiting challenges of attracting, retaining, has to consider how we leverage new practices in terms of onboarding and supporting that next generation of workforce. And finally, we just mentioned risk, increased business uncertainty, higher variability in our demand planning, increased reactive firefighting from variants. We need to solve that. Higher variability in both the delivery of our service and obtaining service level, higher variability in budget recognition and expense management. It really requires a whole new language where we begin assigning risk ratings and build more resilient capacity plans. Other drivers, those are just 5 that we presented. We're interested in all of your thoughts. If you're watching this online through our community site, right below in the feedback section, you're welcome to give feedback. Maybe there's another driver we haven't thought about. Love to hear what other people's thoughts are. We believe these are our 5 drivers, though, that are more than enough reason to step back and really re-examine our workforce management practices from beginning to end. So next week, we'll start beginning to examine a proposed new WFM framework. And we're going to start with a new maturity model for workforce management. Essentially, it's an effective way to determine where you are on your way to a next generation workforce management playbook. And it gives you a path on how to go and achieve that. In addition to giving an overview on a proposed model, we're then going to have our first workshop on March 9th, where we'll roll up our sleeves. We'll do some presentation again on that maturity model, but then we'll discuss and debate that maturity model in our first workshop. These workshops are a part of crafting the next generation workforce management practices, and we encourage you to join in. They're interactive conversations where we'll be presenting a topic each month, really dissecting it and offering challenges as to, is that the best approach going forward? We'll get that scheduled on the books here by the end of the week. We're just trying to nail down a time for March 9th that works for people, but we encourage you to join. Josh, Susan, I want to thank you for joining. That brings us to the end of today's discussion. Again, we're looking for your feedback as well. Drop a post in the community channel. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. Have a great day.